She says a Labour government would recruit an extra 1,000 border staff by imposing a visa charge on millions of tourists visiting Britain. Let's listen to what she had to say.
The next Labour government will introduce exit checks so that we can count people in and out and visas can be enforced. We'll bring back fingerprinting for illegal migrants caught stowing away at Calais, something the government has refused to do. We'll work with other European countries to tackle the problems at Calais and implement the Dublin Convention so that asylum seekers are helped in the first country where they arrive. And to boost enforcement, in the end we need more staff to do the job. And that's why, as part of Labour's zero-based review, we've looked at how to increase border enforcement even when budgets are tight. And so we'll reform arrangements with non-visa countries, charging a small amount, as the United States ESTA programme does, so we can provide additional resources for up to 1,000 more border force and enforcement staff, stronger border policing at Calais, more enforcement of illegal working and overstaying to make sure that people play by the rules, to make Britain's borders more secure and restore confidence in the whole system.
Yvette Cooper speaking about border controls. Well, in the same speech, she said it wasn't right-wing to be concerned about immigration and accused UKIP of promoting division and a nastiness that debases politics. Well, in a minute, we'll be speaking to the Shadow Minister for Immigration, David Hanson, and to Andrew Green from Migration Watch. But first, here's Adam with some balls.
Here at St Pancras Station, they have migrants arriving all the time from exotic places like Sheffield, Bedford, St Albans, even Paris and Brussels. But do passengers think immigration is a good thing or a bad thing for Britain?
I think the net gain to the Exchequer is quite sizable, and I think there's a lot of scaremongering about benefits and whatnot, but overall I think it's a good thing.
There you go, great.
I think because we're a small island, we've got problems with education, schools got too many people in it, health, and so it's just overcrowded, and we need to have limits. I don't say it shouldn't happen, but it should be limited to what we can cope with.
Right. And that's the bad box.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I've worked in, sandwich factories, that kind of stuff, and people there, some of the British guys just can't be bothered.
You're an immigration lawyer.
Yeah.
Ka-ching. What do you make about the current debate then?
Well, it just depends on what people's views are at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
it's like a catch-22. I can't really say too much.
Are you very busy at the moment in your immigration law practice?
Well, yeah. I'm going to Dover at the moment to see 10 clients.
Red or green? Stop or go?
I think it could be more controlled than it is. I think the amount of people coming in under the radar is too great.
Why do you think there's so much sort of angst about it?
I just think people need something to criticise, and I think that people grab on that, and I think the papers are terrible.
Okay. What do you reckon? Who'd like to, immigration, good or bad? Immigration, do you think it's been good or bad for Britain? Grab a ball, pop it in the slots. Right, we're right in the heart of Guardian territory. Your office is round the corner. Does that mean this is a very pro-immigration sort of spot?
I don't think so. No, I think this is probably pretty typical of most London stations. Don't know many Guardian people come through here.
Who'd like to do our survey for the BBC? You grab a ball, pop it in the slots. You're going to have bad luck. You've got your umbrella up inside.
Is that true?
I don't know. We'll find out later.
The BBC, so it must be true. Right? Okay.
Thank you. Immigration, good or bad?
I think good.
Okay.
I am an immigrant.
You are an immigrant.
Yes.
Where have you immigrated from?
From the Netherlands.
Did we welcome you with open arms?
I think so.
Oh right, okay.
I think so, yes.
He's conflicted. He's got a green one and a red one. Why have you gone for red?
I knew you were going to do this.
Oh, are you too scared to say anything? Why is that?
In certain areas of the country, overrun with...
Is it like that in your area?
Yeah.
Where's that, if I can ask?
Luton.
Right. Well, there we go. A massive majority of people here think immigration has been a good thing, although we could get a different result somewhere else, I suppose. Right, where have I never been before? Ooh, Bedford!
Keeping him hard at work. Well, joining me now is Labour's Shadow Immigration Minister David Hanson and Andrew Green from Migration Watch, as promised, who has recently been nominated as a peer, although according to the House of Lords, he won't officially become Lord Green until he receives his letters patent papers, whatever that means and whatever they are. We'll ask you about that at the end. David Hanson, though, first of all, as you hopefully heard there, the people we spoke to in our mood box, scientific, I know it may not be, but they were generally in favour of immigration. Why doesn't the Labour Party celebrate immigration and talk it up rather than ramping up the rhetoric against it?
I think, Joe, we've got to have managed migration. There is a lot of good comes from migration. There are people who bring job skills, employment, entrepreneurs, students. But we need to manage that, and historically we always have, and we should continue to do so. And today Yvette's announcement is about how we strengthen our borders to prevent smuggling, to prevent illegal migration, and to ensure that we retain integrity in that system.
Right, well, you say it's always been managed. People will argue against that when Labour were accused of not having transitional controls when people came from the EU from countries like Poland. That wasn't managed, was it?
No, there's been a mistake, and Ed Miliband has said there was a mistake at the time of that transitional controls. We should have put those transitional controls in, and we will do for future entrants. But we need to have managed migration. There are jobs and skills that UK needs for the future, but we also need to make sure that we don't just have migration as an open door policy. That's absolutely right, that we control and manage that migration.
But Yvette Cooper has said that UKIP is engaged in an arms race of rhetoric that exploits people's fears and creates division. What's the difference between what UKIP is saying and what Labour is saying?
Well, Labour believes in the European Union. We believe in the power of the European Union to create jobs and to have open borders and trading. But we've also got to look at how we manage that. That means we've got to protect the borders against exploitation, which is why we want to strengthen, for example, gangmaster legislation, and why we want to ensure that we have stronger borders, such as the announcement today, to make sure that we have extra people policing those borders. We have to have managed migration working for the United Kingdom, and we can't have a situation which is both those people who want completely open borders and those people who want to close our borders to people who can help grow jobs.
But you know, as well as everyone else does, that of course you can't control the numbers coming from the European Union. You can do a bit of tinkering around the edges, as the government is trying to do in terms of restricting access to benefits, for example, and also about employers, as you will say, paying below the minimum wage. But in general, you are in favour of EU migration as the cornerstone of the Treaty of Rome.
Well, we have to have part of the European Union. That is part of our responsibilities.
So you can't control the numbers there?
But we can put measures in place, such as, for example, stopping people being able to claim unemployment benefit in this country rather than in their home country. We can put in place measures such as enforcing the minimum wage and protecting gangmaster legislation. But we've also got to remember, Joe, there are 1.5 million Britons who live in France, Italy, Germany, Spain and other countries, and we've got to have that balance, I think, in our migration policy, rather than leaving Europe, putting our jobs at risk, and in places like in my constituency where we depend on European-led jobs, losing those jobs to other places in Europe.
Right. Before we go on to the plans for new border guards, Andrew Green, your comments on the mood box, as I said, not scientific. Were you struck by the numbers of people who broadly say immigration's been a good thing?
Well, I thought they asked the wrong question, actually. The question is one of scale. I think everyone would agree that a sensible level of immigration is good for the country in every way. We are an open society, we're an open economy. But the fact of the matter is we need managed migration. It has not been managed. Under the previous government, net foreign immigration, those who come minus those who go, was very nearly 4 million, of whom 2/3 were from outside the European Union. So that is what has to be dealt with, and we're now in a situation where the level of immigration is 250,000 a year. If that continues, if that is allowed to continue, our population will grow by 12 million in the next 20 years. That's an extraordinary number, and that's why people are concerned.
Right. Well, let's first of all go back to David Hanson about the idea for new border guards. The Home Office say actually rather than 1,000 new border guards by your funding plans, it'll be just 59. They call it a catastrophic misunderstanding of the immigration system, which is pretty damning, isn't it, David Hanson?
Well, they're wrong, Joe. We've had this costed independently by the House of Commons Library. What the Home Office are basing their figures on is the existing visa waiver scheme, which only operates in 4 countries and was introduced by the UK government only last year. We're talking about extending the visa waiver scheme to countries that already have a visa waiver scheme for us, like for example the United States or like for example Australia. That small charge of around £10 per head will raise £55 million per year over a 5-year parliament, and will give us the opportunity to invest in border guards and extra border security.
But what will it do, David Hanson? I mean, how will it actually affect the numbers of people coming in and leaving the country?
I don't think it will impact in that way at all. It's not designed to do that. At the moment, we're offering a free service now. The current government have introduced visa waiver to Oman, Qatar, Dubai and others at the moment, and they're not charging them for that. If I go to America tomorrow, Joe, I will be charged £10 for a visa waiver. That goes towards policing the American borders. What we're arguing for is the same, and we believe we can raise around £55 million, put that into border security, and not just deal with migration issues, but also deal with the important issues of drug smuggling, tobacco smuggling, alcohol smuggling, and making sure we have strong integrity in our borders.
Right, but not actually to deal with the numbers of people coming in and out of the country. Do you think it's a good idea, Andrew Green?
Well, I don't think that it will produce the amount of money described, because it hasn't been fully costed. But quite apart from
David Hanson says it has been fully costed.
Let's take him at his word. Let's say it has been fully costed. That is still only 0.5% of the annual visa fees that are collected by the government. It is absolutely trivial. And I think both parties, all the parties, are at fault here. Immigration is the major issue in the public mind, and the amount being spent on it is peanuts. I would like to see all three parties say we will double expenditure on immigration in the next Parliament. That's the kind of step change that we need if you actually want to get the borders under control.
Right, well, how many people would you like to see in terms of net migration? You say it's 250,000, it's about 243,000. The government promised tens of thousands. It doesn't look as if they're going to get that target. What number would you like?
I would like about 70,000.
70,000 a year net migration?
Yes, I think that will be manageable in terms of the future growth of our population, of providing the necessary facilities in schools, hospitals and so on. But we're 4 times that, nearly 3 or 4 times that.
Right.
It's just not feasible.
But the government claims that it's brought down the numbers of immigrants coming from outside the EU. Do you agree without leaving the EU you couldn't bring those figures down to 70,000 a year?
Well, they're two different problems, you say. For non-EU, it is coming down. It will continue to come down. And if they get a grip of bogus students, they'll get it down substantially. As far as EU is concerned, then you're up against a treaty situation, which is a difficult one.
Well, what would you suggest? I mean, to get it down to 70,000, be honest, what would this country have to do?
Well, get it back to what it was before 2005. I mean, there has never been, historically, there's never been any significant immigration from the European Union to the UK until the Eastern European countries joined. Now, over time, the economies in Spain and Italy, who are now sending us people, will improve. Over more time, Eastern Europe will improve. But until then, we need some kind of barrier that reduces the rate of inflow.
Right. What do you say, David Hanson, to Andrew Green's point about doubling the amount of money that's actually spent on immigration, managing it?
Well, we've got to be realistic, Joe, and we have to work within what we can do. And we've put forward today a sensible solution that raises £55 million a year to put 1,000 people...
Andrew Green says that's peanuts.
Well, it may be peanuts. Andrew has the luxury. Andrew has the luxury of being able to argue a case without having to deliver in government. I have to, if I were the immigration minister next year, deliver in government. And we've said now, responsibly, there's a cost that we can make and there's a saving that we can endure by putting a charge on people who are coming to this country from outside on a visa waiver scheme and extend it, and that will strengthen our borders. I think that's a fair, reasonable thing to do. There may be more things we can do in government, but I would expect, and you would expect me to have a costly programme, and that's what we're trying to do now.
Right. What do you say to that? I mean, you are in a luxurious position of always opposing what the government and opposition parties do. You never have to actually make those decisions yourself.
I agree it is a luxury, but I also think that priorities are extremely important. And if you believe that this is the #1 issue for the public, which I think Peter Kellner will confirm...
Well, we'll come to that.
You ought to be doing something about it.
Right. Is it the #1 issue? Has it been consistently?
It vies with the economy as the #1 issue when people are asked what's the biggest issue facing Britain. When voters are asked what matters most to you and your family, it tends to drop down a bit. It's still quite high, but it falls short of the economy and the health service. Of course, amongst UKIP voters, now an increasing number, it is absolutely the top issue, way ahead of Europe actually. Immigration is a top issue amongst UKIP voters, both whether you ask about the country or about you and your family.
Right. What about in terms of, is it about numbers or is it about strain on services like schools and hospitals as a result of those numbers? Because as we can see and has been demonstrated by reports, economically, broadly, evidence seems to say it's a good thing, but that's not the personal experience generally.
That's right. People have a very different view. Take one example. As I understand it, Andrew will correct me if I'm wrong, of the 2.3 million people living here who were born elsewhere in the European Union, 3% claim unemployment benefits or other unemployment-related job seekers allowance and so on. You ask people what they think the proportion is. Amongst UKIP voters, typically they say 25 to 30%. In other words, when they say we've got to stop welfare tourism, they're starting from a position in terms of the facts, which is 10 times the actual number. And I think one of the issues, I don't know if David Hanson would like to respond to this, is that Labour seem to be saying we recognise this is a huge problem and we'll do a lot about it.
But the figures don't bear it out.
Actually, the figures don't suggest it is that. It may still be worth doing. I'm not disputing clamping down on this issue, but I'm saying it isn't as big a problem as a lot of people say it is.
Right, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, but we will discuss it again. David Hanson, thank you. When will you become Lord Green then?
In 10 days' time, I think.
Surprised?
Yes. Amazed.
I'll leave it there.